How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. It's time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. Only got a few books to go over this week, but let's get into it. Coming up next. Welcome back. So let's get into the books I read this week. We're going to start over in DC with Sword of Azrael. This is from Dan Waters, issue number 6 of 6. So this is the conclusion of this run. I will say it's a great Azrael book. I don't really know too much about the character other than what I read in Arkham City, whatever that was, City Order of the New World, something like that. That came out a little while ago. This is like an Azrael that spun out of that from Dan Waters. And I like this one a lot. The art style was a little bit different from what I was used to seeing him as drawn by Danny. But the art style in here was pretty fun. It had like an anime-ish type look to it. And I thought it was pretty cool, very creative and kind of like psychedelic at the same time. It's almost like a Doctor Strange or something crazy going on in here from time to time. So I kind of feared a little bit about halfway through this run, around issue 3 or 4, where we were kind of deviating from our main focus. We were kind of introduced to this threat in the first couple of issues. We had like a little bit of a deviation where our Azrael character needed to kind of figure out his origins, and that took about an issue or 2, maybe 2.5 to figure out. When you're doing a 6-issue run, it's kind of hard to have that little deviation from the main plot because it makes the ending happen just so quickly. And it kind of happened in here, and it's forgivable because the ending was pretty satisfying. I thought it was pretty straightforward. It was something that we kind of saw coming. We basically had somebody that was tricked into following his footsteps again. We learned all this twisted origin story about Azrael and the other people like him that might be planted around the world. And so we really did a deep dive on the origin story and like the reasoning for his existence, which I thought was pretty cool to do. But you know, when you have only 6 issues, you kind of want to cram pack as much as you can into that. Any deviations from the main plot take up a lot of valuable time. If this was an 8-issue run, that would be forgivable, but 6 issues is kind of hard to do all that in. With that said, it's a great Azrael book. I really recommend this one, even with that, because everything that we see in this book is earned. It feels great. It's a cool story. There's only 6 issues. I would have loved to see this at 8 issues. I think it would have worked better in that case. Still recommended though. Check it out. Batman number 131, still by Chip Zdarsky, but we have Hawthorne on this instead of Jorge Remendez, which you'll immediately recognize when you start flipping through here. Not to say that Hawthorne's not a great artist, it's just a different style. It has like this brightness to it. It's almost like a Brian Hitch kind of a style almost, which I don't really like too much. But it does work in this book because our action scenes are pretty dynamic, they're energetic, and they're pretty cool. And I like the way they portray Batman, or Bruce Wayne rather, in this book. So I'm not going to spoil what happens at the end of the failsafe arc, but we have basically Bruce Wayne somewhere where he doesn't recognize. It's like another version of Gotham, and everything's kind of twisted around him. People are in different roles. Harvey's some kind of weird, I don't know if he's like cybernetic, but he's definitely juiced up with like Bane venom, and he's going around just like policing the day and like throwing his weight around inappropriately, things like that. We have some other familiar faces in these weird different roles. So it's kind of like an Elseworld Gotham that Bruce finds him in, and he's still recovering from the failsafe battle. And so, yeah, that's what's kind of going on here. It's a big, where am I? How did I get here kind of a thing. And then our real world, we have some of our Robins teaming up, trying to figure out what they need to do to get Bruce back. So, it was interesting. It was definitely a departure from the failsafe run, but it is cool. There's a lot of great little action scenes in here, a lot of cool stuff happening in the panels, but it's definitely a different pace, different art style, wickedly different art story direction as well. So I can see that some people might not like this right away, but let's give it a few issues, see how it matures, see where it goes, and then we'll get some more context for this issue, and then we can kind of rate the whole run as a whole. But still pretty cool. Check it out. We got Poison Ivy issue number 8 from G. Willow Wilson, and we have art by Ilhan, I believe is how you pronounce that. First off, what an amazing cover. She's doing a great job. Frizen's doing an amazing job on these covers, and always appreciate that. And I appreciate that it's not an incentive, because sometimes her covers are incentives, and that drives me crazy. First off, card stock, probably because it's the variant cover and they like to do that. And the interior pages are more of that newspaper quality. So I've said it before, I love when they do that because I feel like the art and the colors really pops. Give you a little preview of the art style in there. Very similar to what we saw in volume number 1. I think they set a precedence for some wickedly detailed, just like gnarly fungus, spore, vine-like art. And they really need to carry that forward if they were going to do another artist change on here. Basically, we have Poison Ivy doing some infiltrating work, going behind the scenes, working for an employer who's poisoning the land, things like that, creating some little plant monsters because of their actions, trying to infiltrate. This person actually gets the upper hand, trying to relive or trying to finish the work that Woodrow started in the very beginning. And this is Poison Ivy relying on some people in this organization as well to kind of help her out, come together, and kind of save the day. What's also interesting is there's a little bit of a relationship, maybe destined to fail, brewing a little bit in this issue as well. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I don't think Harley has anything to worry about, but it's still pretty cool, and it's a neat little one-issue relationship. If it goes on from there, we'll see. But again, the art's really interesting. I like that. This Poison Ivy run's pretty good. I mean, the first volume was great. There was probably one issue that was a little bit weak, but overall, if you've been wanting to get into the character and want to see what's going on, this is definitely a cool run to check out. Some amazing covers as well, and the art is really cool too. It's a little bit different than what we're seeing in other books right now. So check out Poison Ivy. It's pretty cool. That's actually it for DC. We're going to hop over into a few Marvel books, and then we have one indie to go over as well. So we're going to start with Fantastic Four. This is issue number 3. I'm always getting those Alex Ross covers. I think it's going to be pretty cool when it's done. Ryan North is on the writing for this one. And so here we are with our Johnny Storm issue. So we had the first issue, which was featuring The Thing. So don't be confused by that. And then we had our second issue with Reed and Sue Storm. And then we have our third issue here with Johnny Blaze. So they're all pretty self-contained issues. They reference each other, but it's focusing on these individual characters in these issues so far. I would imagine, especially after reading issue number 3, they will get back together. In fact, they're heading in that direction towards the end of this issue. But the first 3 issues are very isolated incidents kinds of stuff, like small town issues that they have to resolve, some mysteries, things like that. Kind of like Twilight Zone episodes in a way. And so that's how issue number 1 and 2 went. This issue here is more about a toxic employer doing some shady crap, not treating his employees very well, and Johnny's just not having it, and he kind of goes behind and comes up with a plan with his fellow employees and things like that. People have been spit on and taken advantage of, and they kind of seek their revenge on this employer. So, from a storytelling perspective, it's not as Twilight Zone-ish as issue number 1 and 2 were, but it was still fun at the end of the day. I'm not used to reading a lot of Fantastic Four, especially a lot of new Fantastic Four. So this Johnny Storm, he's a little bit different than what I remember from like some of the classic runs, like the Life Story stuff. He's a little bit more matured. He's not so much of a hothead, so to speak. And so, it was pretty interesting. Art style, it's okay. Not a big fan of the art, but I've definitely seen worse. And so I'm interested to see what happens when these guys all get back together. It looks like they're heading in that direction. I think in issue 4, God willing, they'll be back together, and we'll see some cool progression, some cool stories from that. So Fantastic Four, we got to get through these first issues, get the team back together, figure out where we're going to go from there, figure out some kind of main threat, maybe go back up into space. Who knows? We'll see. Going over to Marvel right now, we have Scarlet Witch issue number 1 from Steve Orlando, and I believe Pacelli is on the art for here. Is it Sarah? Yes, it is. So this book is actually interesting. I got it because of the variant cover right here, first off, because it's absolutely fire. And then second, I was like, you know what? It's a new Scarlet Witch. It's interesting. We're coming off of Multiverse of Madness, kind of. It came out a little while ago. And I liked that movie a lot, actually. And so I'm like, yeah, let's jump into a Scarlet Witch book. It's just to see what's going on from here. I just recently reread for like the 3rd time House of M. And so, I'm kind of in that mood, right? So I wanted to pick this one up. So what is this one about? Basically, this is like Scarlet Witch running her own midnight mission, like a Moon Knight midnight mission, right? She's got like a magical place, a magical door, people who are lost, people who are, just trying to figure themselves out, whatever it is, who are, people who are completely lost. They kind of magically come through this door and seek advice, seek help, seek counsel from our Scarlet Witch. And that's exactly what happens in here. We have somebody that comes through the door and she's actually in need and she doesn't quite know what to do. And so Scarlet Witch realizes there's some kind of mysterious magic behind her depression and why her hometown is actually kind of being taken over by this overlord kind of guy. He's kind of brainwashing everybody. Very similar way that she did inside of Scarlet Witch and Vision, that show on Disney Plus. So it was interesting to kind of see that she's, matured a little bit from there. She makes some references about how bad it is to control people. And, maybe she's done that in the past. And so she's reconciling that as well. And she helps this lady save the day and get her town back. There's one interesting component in here. This girl that comes through to kind of seek advice. She actually brings back some kind of an artifact that Scarlet Witch is going to investigate further in further issues. So I think that's going to be kind of cool to see where that ends up going. But art is interesting. Faces are a little weird. Action scenes are fun. I like the use of magic and things like that. So some of the details are interesting. And then there's a little hook, interesting tidbit at the very, very end that's going to send the story another interesting direction, especially for those who are more familiar with the Scarlet Witch and Vision and like their family dynamics and where they kind of go and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be an interesting run. I'll keep reading it because I'm interested in the character. It's got some interesting things it's exploring right now, a little bit different than things I'm reading as well. So it's not too bad. Check it out. One book I picked up because I was just a short week. And so I was like, yeah, let's go ahead and get this one too. It was Joe Fixit, #1, a Hulk persona that I'm not too familiar with. I think we explored it a little bit in Immortal Hulk. Maybe it was referenced. I can't remember. And then in Donny Cates' run, maybe it was referenced again. But I mean, there wasn't any kind of major arcs in there. The first page starts with, who is Joe Fixit? And it's kind of starting off in this real mysterious way. Like, hey, nobody knows he's actually the Hulk, or he's like a version of the Hulk, which, I mean, my memory and my knowledge of the Hulk in general is pretty limited outside of the runs I just mentioned a minute ago. But I would assume that like people know that he's just another one of his personas, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But it is a pretty interesting book. It's not necessarily from the perspective of Joe Fixit or the Hulk. It's actually from the perspective of Spider-Man. He's in town in Vegas doing some stuff. He follows the Kingpin he runs into, and the Kingpin has some business with Joe Fixit's boss. And so things kind of go south pretty quickly, but it is pretty fun. We get a decent amount of battle in here. We get some Kingpin action as well. And just some, Kingpin's going to go over here and kind of take over Vegas, and things don't go according to plan because he actually runs into the Hulk, right? So, it was interesting. It was definitely not what I was expecting. I was expecting like a Joe Fixit-centered book from his perspective, figuring things out, maybe why he's doing the things that he's doing, who this persona is. What we get is another Spider-Man book. And so I'm not entirely sure why that is the way it is, but Peter David, a pretty decent writer, and so we'll kind of figure out where it's going from there. So again, if you're looking for a Joe Fixit-centered book from his perspective, this isn't the book for you so far. This is more of another Spider-Man side story that involves the Kingpin and his plan to take over Vegas, but Joe Fixit is in the way. So if you're interested in that, this might be a book for you. Check it out then. The next book is a Blame Robbie at Pop Culture Philosophers. We have Boom Studio Mosely issue #1. This was not on my radar at all. I remember seeing the cover on FOC, and for some reason I didn't click that pre-order button, but luckily my shop over at Cadets got a couple copies and was in my pull box. So this is from Rob Glory. I hope I'm saying that right, but this is another pretty cool book. So longtime viewers of the channel know that I like these like human robot or human technology issue books, right? Things that like we don't quite get along kind of stuff. And that's exactly what we get in here. A little bit of a time jumpy issue. We kind of start in the past. We have this father who's kind of going to this area where he's educating these robots. It's really kind of mysterious about the exact plan and what's going on, but we get this idea that there's all these different robots in this subdivision type of a place, and they sit down and they like live with these humans for a whole year, presumably to understand humanity and culture and things like that. We get a little bit of a time jump in here too to a more dystopian future where robots kind of are taking over a little bit. There's still humans here and there, but there's definitely human-robot integration, and robots are a little bit out of control right now. So we got to dial it back a little bit right here. So it is pretty interesting. I'll give you a little taste of the art style here. Here's our human character that we're following, and he's kind of walking around. He's kind of old school. He doesn't like the way things have changed. His daughter, though, is kind of embracing all the different changes and is almost like a superhero in this book. But the book kind of turns a little bit south in like the family dynamics department and things like that. So it's a pretty interesting issue. It's Something to be on the lookout for sure. I love the art in here. I don't want to show you some of these back pages because it kind of gives away a little bit of the plot and where the book is going. But Mosely issue number 1, a pleasant surprise. Pretty cool. If it's at your shop, definitely worth a pickup, I think. It's pretty fun. So guys, that's all I got for you this week. Some light weeks at the end of December, leading into January. Things are going to be ramping up, I'm sure, in no time. So stick around. I'll be doing more reviews, more haul videos and everything. So check those out. But in the meantime, if you haven't yet, please check out the best of 2022. I have about 20 books on that list. Some books you probably read, some books you may not have read, and let me know in the comments things that I missed. But as always, I appreciate you watching the video. Like, subscribe, and share, and hit that bell notification to be alerted of future videos. Thank you very much for watching again. I will see you all down in the comments.